open with his 5 minutes of remarks, and then we'll get into questions sooner rather than later. Welcome once again, Minister Blair, to the committee. We appreciate you making the time available to us. Minister Blair, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the kind invitation from this committee to come before you again today. I'm always appreciative of the opportunity. Today I am joined by Deputy Minister Bill Matthews, our Vice Chief of Defense, General Francis, Chief Financial Officer Terry Crosby, Assistant Deputy Minister Pete Hammerschmidt, although I'm looking around, I don't see Pete with us yet here today. We also have our Chief Communications Security Establishment, Carolyn Xavier. Mr. Chair, I wonder if I might take just a brief moment to advise this committee. This will be the last appearance of Deputy Minister Bill Matthews, who is being moved over to Treasury Board Secretariat. We have a new Deputy Minister coming in, but I wanted to take this opportunity because he's been ably serving both me, the Ministry, and this committee for a considerable period of time, just to acknowledge that and to say thanks.
And I think the committee would endorse those remarks and appreciate your contributions to the committee's deliberations, and particularly appreciate your contributions to making sure that the minister says what the minister says. So, thank you.
And those contributions have been quite extraordinary. Thank you for acknowledging that. 1 week ago, the Prime Minister, actually more than 1 week ago, a number of weeks ago, the Prime Minister and I released Canada's new defence policy, Our North Strong and Free, which was a renewed vision for Canada's defence. We developed this policy. Actually, I'm going to, if I may, they've put the wrong document in front of me here. And I'm back. 1 week. Yeah, well, I could just wing it. I'm here to talk to you about the mains and estimates. For some reason, my people are rather scrambling right now to pull that up, but I have that information in front of me. Thanks very much. Pleased to join you today to provide a overview of the main estimates for the Department of National Defence, the Canadian Armed Forces, and the Communications Security Establishment. These estimates come at a rather critical time. Countries like Russia and China are challenging the rules-based international order. Technological advances are enhancing the state's abilities to protect military might. And, of course, climate change is making Canada's north far more accessible. Each of these challenges has significant implications for the defence and security of our country and our allies and partners around the world. We are going to meet these challenges while remaining responsible stewards of public funds. And as such, we're requesting almost $30.6 billion through this year's mains estimates. This represents a 15.46% increase over last year's mains estimates, and it's planned increases in operating funding, incremental funding for international operations, capital funding, and in-service support funding, just to highlight a few of the planned expenditures. We are also requesting just over $1 billion to the Communications Security Establishment to further their foreign intelligence, cybersecurity, and cyber mandate. These investments support the goals of Canada's new defence policy, Our North Strong and Free, in defending Canada's values and global interests. I would like to provide you with an overview of some of the key items that we'll be presenting here today. Members of the Canadian Armed Forces support peace, freedom, and democracy around the world. To further these efforts, we are requesting $797 million towards the following operations: Operation Reassurance, which supports NATO's assurance and deterrence measures in Central and Eastern Europe; Unifier, which provides military training to the armed forces of Ukraine; Impact, which is helping to build the military capabilities of Iran, Jordan, and Lebanon; and Artemis, which provides maritime security in the Western Indian Ocean. This funding also supports the continued implementation of the Indo-Pacific Strategy, and beyond these lines of efforts, we are also requesting $893.5 million in grants and contributions. And this money will go towards initiatives like the Military Training and Cooperation Program, which provides Ukraine with additional military aid and further supports Operation Unifier and Canada's Indo-Pacific Strategy through Operation Horizon. It will also go towards NATO programs that help us defend Canada's interests and values while contributing to international peace and security. To carry out these critical operations and defend our interests, military members must be well equipped, and we are therefore requesting $7.2 billion to ensure that they have the right capabilities to do their jobs, including up to 16 next-generation multi-mission aircraft through the Canadian Multi-Mission Aircraft Project, up to 9 CC-330 multi-role tanker support aircraft through the Strategic Tanker Transport Capability Project, an initial set of the 16 F-35 Advanced Fighter Aircraft and Associated Equipment Services through the Future Fighter Capability Project, and as well 15 ships as part of the Canadian Surface Combatant Project, among other items. Part of this funding will also go towards enhancing and strengthening the Canadian Armed Forces digital capabilities and maintain software, boost cybersecurity, improve data management, and foster innovation. Another $613 million will allow us to advance major capital acquisition projects like the Point Defense Missile System upgrade and the lightweight torpedo upgrade. It will allow us to acquire short-range and long-term missiles and replenish CAF ammunition and explosives that were donated to Ukraine. And, Mr. Chair, none of this work could be possible without our military and civilian members. They are, of course, our greatest asset. We are requesting approximately $1.1 billion towards fair compensation for CAF members as reflected in the updated military pay and collective agreement. And additionally, $446 million towards the long-term disability payments and life insurance plans for CAF members, and approximately $1.8 billion in contributions toward the employment benefit plans for military and civilian staff. Mr. Chair and committee members, as part of the Refocusing Government Spending Initiative announced in Budget 2023, we have included $613 million in approved reductions in these main estimates. These reductions are intended to minimize the impact on military readiness so that we stay effective in the rapidly evolving defense and security domain. Thank you, and I'll be happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Minister Blair. Mr. Brazan, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Minister, thanks for joining us today. Of course, this past week or so, we've been hearing criticisms from our allies on Canada failing to meet the NATO target. We heard from the Americans. Donald Tusk, Prime Minister of Poland, has raised this concern lately, as well as Prime Minister of Estonia. Minister, do you believe Canada should be at the 2%?
Yes, I do, and I can also share with you that we're working very hard to achieve that, and in fact...
But you have in the main estimates that are here, the budget that you've tabled, the DPU that was just released, no plans on getting to 2%. Prime Minister Trudeau is quoted in secret documents that were released to the media some time ago that Canada will never make the 2%. So who's stopping you as Minister of Defence from getting to 2%?
Well, if I may answer your question. First of all, the budgetary increases I present here in the new mains estimate, plus the money that will be included in the budget when passed, that we've just introduced in Parliament, it will result in an increase in our defence spending by 27% next year over this year, and it brings us much closer to that 2%. The things that we have articulated in these estimates under the Strong, Secure and Engaged project and now in the new Defence Policy Update are now Strong and Free, brings us to 1.76, but we've also indicated, Mr. Brazan, to our allies and to Canadians that in addition to those things which are now fully funded once that budget is passed, and I very much look forward to your support in getting that budget through.
Minister, you know that there's a lot in that budget that we disagree with that we aren't going to be funding. And we know that most of the funding that you had in your DPU is backloaded for the future government. It's not going to be for this first government. You said yourself the Canadian Armed Forces are in a death spiral. You say that we need 6,700 military housing units. And yet in this budget, in these estimates, and in the next year's budget that was in the DPU, there's zero funding for new military housing. We're in a retention and recruitment problem, and yet one of the problems we're hearing is that our troops are living rough. They are unhoused. They're living in tents, cars, and campers, or living in precarious situations that sometimes could lead to domestic violence. Where are the new houses, and why are you backloading the DPU onto the future government rather than dealing with it yourself right now?
Yeah, I've two things in response to that. First of all, You recall, of course, in 2014, when we actually committed to 2% in Wales, the next thing a Conservative government did was actually reduce defence spending below 1%. And since that time...
Correct you on that, sir. I'll correct you on that. We made the commitment in 2014, and it was a 10-year commitment. Guess what? That 10-year commitment ends now. You've been government 9 years. Why aren't we hitting those targets? And when we get down to it, you guys did creative accounting on... Mr. Chair, this is my time.
Well, hang on. This is not question period. So let the minister. I'm asking the minister to try to answer your question. Then you can ask it again or defend.
I was very creative with the fact that when you committed to 2%, the very next thing a Conservative government did was reduce defence spending to its lowest amount in any Canadian history, less than 1%. And since that time, and this is rather important, Mr. Bazan, at the end of this year, we will have more than doubled defence spending, and every single nickel of that, I checked, you voted against it. Every single dollar that we added to defence spending, you reduced.
Well, let's not forget that.
We just had a question now.
Mr. Minister, we just had a motion in front of the House last week to put a freeze on the rent increases on our own military, and you voted against that, and we need to get that rolled back so we put more money in the hands of our troops. But you went ahead anyway, and you still increased funding. You still went ahead, and we know that we have military members right now that are having to buy their own kit, and we know that that comes out of their own pocket. We were in Latvia last year as committee, and we actually saw it where troops are buying their own helmets, their own hearing protection, their own vests. You know, that is despicable that they had to actually do that themselves. So I want to move on to talk about, but like we can play this game.
Does the member not want to hear an answer to the housing question?
Yeah, so let's get to it instead of the rhetoric.
Go ahead, Minister.
Just to be clear, we're working very hard in bases right across the country with mayors and with the private sector. The Canadian Armed Forces has a great deal of property which is serviced and available for the building of military housing. We are working with the private sector and with other orders of government to utilize the value of that land to build housing for Canadian Armed Forces members. There are some extraordinary opportunities right across this country. We said right in our policy document that we are prioritizing Halifax, Toronto, and Vancouver, but I can tell you I have proposals.
So I got a minute left, Minister.
From Trenton,
so let me just
from
say,
Petawawa, from Borden, and from Esquimalt. There are many opportunities for us to respond very quickly. With all due respect, in these estimates, there's still $0, even if you're looking at working with municipalities, even if you're looking at working with the private sector. There's $0 from the government going into military housing, and bases need to be renovated. We know that in the last 2 years, only 38 homes were built for the Canadian Armed Forces. In my last minute here, I just want to ask a question, Minister. You guys built when you were here.
You were just in March up in Edmonton, and you were asked a question about the CRV-7 rockets that Ukraine asked for back in November. We, as a party and a Pierre Poilievre, asked the government to send them in February. And you in March said we're doing the work right now to make sure these munitions can be safely transported, and it'll only be a matter of days and move quickly. Ukraine took that, say that they expected announcements shortly. Why haven't the CRV-7 rockets been sent to Ukraine? They need them now. And where is the NASAM that you promised, or it was promised by Minister Anand 18 months ago?
And we are working with the Ukrainians with respect to delivering the CRV-7s, but there is work ongoing, and perhaps that might be a question you want to ask the Deputy Minister, the status of the safety of, first of all, the utility and the safety of transporting those munitions to Ukraine, and with respect, thank you for the question on the NASAMs. Ukraine said that they needed NASAM rockets. We don't have any. We went to the market to see if we could purchase them. It was going to take 4 or 5 years, so we went to the United States to expedite that acquisition. As I've already reported to this committee many times,
this is getting way beyond 20 seconds.
$400 million in order to expedite that. They have placed the order. They've promised us as soon as it comes off the production line, it will be delivered. But I'll also share with you, we've heard very clearly the need for
as important as this sharing might be, Mr. Bazan has finished his questions.
$76 million just 2 weeks ago in order to...
Minister?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. We're back to Mr. Fillmore. Hopefully, Mr. Fillmore, you appreciate that 6 minutes is actually 6 minutes.
I'm a stickler for any rule you set, Mr. Chair. Minister, thank you to you and the deputy and the other witnesses for making time for us today. I'm very grateful for that. Minister, as you know, I am very proud to represent Halifax, the home of Canada's East Coast Navy, and the National Shipbuilding Strategy has been a tremendous economic driver across the country, but in particular around Halifax and Nova Scotia, creating thousands of well-paying jobs, building the next fleet of vessels for our Navy. We're seeing the results of that now. In the last 2 weeks, we've commissioned HMCS William Hall. That was AOPS number 4 into service. And over the weekend, I attended the naming ceremony for AOPS 5, the future HMCS Frederick Rolette. We got 3 more AOPS to go, 2 of them for the Coast Guard, and then we're going to turn our mind to building the 15 Canada Surface Combatants, or CSCs. Could you update the committee on the status of that work with the CSCs, please?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Mr. Fillmore. I'm pleased, first of all, in the estimates that I brought before you today, it includes, we are requesting $1.28 billion for the Canadian Surface Combatant Project. This funding is going to be used to support our work with industry to finalize the selected ship design. It's also enhancing shipyard infrastructure. And in fact, I have some very good news to share with this committee that starting in July of this year, to ensure the shipyard in Halifax is prepared to begin full production in 2025, that work will begin in starting to cut the steel for the surface combatant ships. This work, as you have said, is very significant in that it creates, I think, long-term and sustainable job opportunities for workers in Halifax. It also enables the Canadian Navy to acquire the ships that they need to replace the Halifax frigates. And I would also take the opportunity, Andy, to point out that in our new budget 2024 and in the new DPU, we've included a substantial amount of money, approximately $1.5 billion, to continue to maintain the Halifax frigates. And that will take place in shipyards right across the country, but certainly in Halifax. So a very important place where this work gets done. So as the shipyard workers in Halifax continue with the construction of the new surface combatant fleet to replace the Halifax frigate, we are also now budgeting the money that is going to be required to keep the Halifax in service, to enable our Royal Canadian Navy to continue to deliver on the missions to which we ask of them as we proceed with the important work of delivering a new and very exciting new platform for them.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Can you talk to the committee about how the CSCs will support Canadian sovereignty and security?
Our intention is to deliver 15 new Canadian surface combatant missions. We have responsibilities, as you know, in NATO, particularly in the North Atlantic, but we have emerging and new responsibilities in the Indo-Pacific. And as the Admiral Topshee has shared with us and with the Canadian public, fulfilling that mission with new capabilities. One of the challenges that we have faced is, for example, we've been sending 3 of our Halifax frigates into the Indo-Pacific since we entered into that strategy. And so right now, for example, I have the Halifax is in the Indian Ocean, the Montreal is in the Indian Ocean and making its way in towards the Taiwan Strait. Those missions are critically important for us to demonstrate, first of all, Canada's commitment to the region, but also to alongside our allies, stand up for that international rules-based order. And one of the things we heard from the Indo-Pacific, for example, from those countries, is that they had an expectation that they would see a more persistent presence of Canada's military in the region. I've had a number of discussions with our Five Eyes partners, Australia and the United States in particular, about the important work that they're doing. And the capabilities that will be provided by the Canadian Surface Combatant ships is going to be an important contribution that Canada will make to do our part to maintain adherence to that international rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific, and I think demonstrate very ably to our allies. Additionally, we are taking on additional responsibilities with the advent of Finland and Sweden into NATO. I think there is going to be through NATO a much increased attention to our Arctic responsibilities in the northern frontier of NATO, and the surface combatant ships are going to play an incredibly significant and important role. And then finally, and as each of the things that Canada agrees to participate in the Middle East, in the Red Sea, and in the Gulf of Aden, and in places right around the world, we want to make sure that the Navy has the capability to project our influence, but also to defend our crews in those areas. And surface combatanship is going to provide us with that capability.
1 minute,
Okay,
Mr.
thank you,
Fillmore.
Mr. Chair, time check, another minute?
1 minute.
Minister, it's been 2 years since Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. We've seen the Ukrainian people demonstrate incredible resilience in defending their homeland. In that same time, Canada has stepped up with about $4 billion in military assistance to Ukraine. Could you give an update on the current scope of our assistance efforts and what impact they're having on Ukraine? And if you have time, what does the future of our assistance look like?
You don't have that much time. 30 seconds.
Stay within time here. We've provided about $4 billion in military assistance, but at the same time, there's much more work to be done. One of the challenges that we have faced in providing that assistance, as Mr. Bazan pointed out, is getting those deliveries done in a timely way. And so one of the things that we have done, we have provided all of the spare ammunition, for example, that we've sent it to Ukraine. As a consequence, Canadian stocks are somewhat diminished, and we've got to replace those. But Canadian manufacturing and the production lines have somewhat of a limited capacity. We've now put money on the table through the DPU to invest in those production lines and money for long-term contracts to increase production. But recognizing that it takes time to increase that production and to acquire those munitions, we've also made deals.
We're going to have to leave that answer
in order to acquire artillery ammunition, and most recently with the Germans, almost $76 billion committed to them so that we can acquire air missile defense systems more quickly for the Ukrainians.
We have 6 minutes has become 6.5 minutes. Madame Michaud, 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, and thank you to your colleagues for being with us this morning to answer your questions. It's very appreciated. First, I'd like to hear the Minister on the situation on the non-public funds workers. They're not public servants. We're not fully fledged public servants, if you will. But did you work on behalf of the Chief of Defense Staff under the authority of the Minister of National Defense? As you probably know, they've been on strike since January 15, and their main requests are the following, which I'm sure you know as well. We're asking for fair pay comparatively to the public service, and by abolishing a 1982 Order in Council preventing from them being recognized as public servants. They want also uniform pay between the bases. They want stable pay as well. And compared to public servants, they don't have the same benefits, the same protections that public servants have because of this Order in Council of 1982. So they don't fall under the labor laws that govern the public service, and they're also not paid as much. For example, an accountant at Valcartier is paid $10 less an hour than a person doing the exact same work on a base in Ottawa. So my question is the following. Does the minister consider that this is justifiable, that these workers in Quebec are sometimes paid 30% less than their counterparts in other provinces? And what is your department doing as we speak to solve this situation?
Very much, Christina. First of all, as you mentioned, these employees are not public servants, but I feel a responsibility for them because the work they do on behalf of the Canadian Armed Forces and our members is really important and much valued by them. And so when this labor dispute first began, I reached out and I had a number of meetings with the Public Service Union, and including a number of conversations with their president. I also spoke to the CEO of the employer in this case and tried very hard to bring them together. I reached out and worked with actually the president of the Canadian Labour Congress to try to get their assistance in appointing a mediator, because we really felt that the best way to resolve this is at the bargaining table. That's, in my opinion, that's to keep the parties together and to keep them working on it. I know that there was some progress made in that a number of the bargaining units outside of Quebec resolved their contracts. I was, and I think as you were, we both shared disappointment that they weren't able to reach an agreement with those employees in Quebec, so we're going to continue to lean into it. I think those are important people. They're not public servants, and I know there is some disparity between the public service pay levels, particularly after the most recent wage settlement for those employees, and these other employees which are not public servants, but their work is valued. And so I think there's still a lot of work to do among those in Quebec, and we'll continue to work with with their union representatives, with anyone that would help bring the parties together to provide whatever assistance you can. And I apologize, I'm not going to weigh in on what the outcome of those negotiations are. Frankly, I'm not a party to those negotiations, as you've acknowledged. But I think it's important that we continue to do everything we can to keep them at the bargaining table to come to an appropriate and fair resolution for those workers.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Évidemment, vous n'êtes pas le...
Thank you, Minister. Of course, you're not at the negotiating table, I agree. But I'm sure that the department has some sway, some power. For example, you could modify this order in council or abrogate it. As you said, they're not public servants compared to our public service here. But by abolishing this order in council from 1982, you would solve the issue. Is that a possible solution? Would your government go ahead with abolishing this 1982 order in council so that they can become fully fledged public servants? I'm sure that would solve most of the issues.
1982, this relationship has worked fairly well for those employees. There is a labor dispute clearly going on right now. I think my best fulfillment of my responsibilities is to do everything I can to facilitate a mutually acceptable negotiated settlement between the parties. I will share with you, I'm not at the present time contemplating changing the legislation.
Je vous remercie pour votre honnêteté.
Thank you for your honesty. I'd like to come back to military spending, that proverbial NATO 2%. There was a letter published last week. It was signed by 23 Republican and Democrat senators of the United States asking Canada to respect its 2014 commitments to NATO. That is to say that to spend 20% of their defense spending on equipment to modernize its capacity, so on and so forth. The fact that U.S. senators came out with a public letter putting pressure on Canada, is it working? That's my first question. Does your department feel more pressure to increase spending? And number two, does this have an impact on your relationship with our allies? When other countries see that we're not attaining our objectives under our NATO commitments, can this have a negative impact on our relationship with allies?
Thank you very much. First of all, the pressure I feel is to deliver for the Canadian Armed Forces the equipment that they need and the support for their people and the people that they need to do the jobs the Canadians ask of them. I think that's my first responsibility, and so that's the pressure I feel. And at the same time, I think as well, we have a responsibility in government, and that includes all of us, by the way, to make sure that when we spend Canadian taxpayer dollars, we actually create a real return on that investment of public value. And so making sure that we spend the money well. I have good news in that we will reach that 20% standard this year and every year thereafter under the current spending initiative of spending on new equipment. But I think it's really important, first of all, for the Canadian Armed Forces to well define what their requirements are and for then us to have robust procurement processes to get the best value for Canadians.
Thank you, Minister. Always good to leave a question on good news. Madame Matheson, 6 minutes.
Minister, have you seen the videos of people in Rafah screaming as they have been burned alive in their tents yesterday?
No,
you have not seen them?
No.
So you did not see the images from the bombing that took place for the displaced persons in the camp where people were told that they would be safe. I asked you weeks ago about the upcoming testing event hosted by your department in Alberta, in which Israeli weapons tested on Palestinians will be showcased. Have you cancelled this event?
No, and to be clear, that's not what we were testing. What we were testing, and there were a number of participants, including Israel, we were testing defensive systems to defeat drone attacks, so that if drones were sent against our armed forces, we were looking for the best technology to defeat those drones. There was nothing offensive about what was being tested in Alberta.
However, that company that was allowed to participate was the Israeli weapons were allowed into Canada, that hosting the event, these weapons are being marketed as battle-tested on Palestinians. The owners of that company boasted about testing them on Palestinians. They boasted about this war being good for their company, and they're being tested on these innocent civilians. Children have been slaughtered, Minister. your government is supporting that. Can you explain how Canada can continue to support this when the Israeli government is committing genocide? Directly, Palestinian civilians are being placed into safe zones, and then they're being hit with 2,000-pound bombs on those safe zones.
I have to correct something you said because our government is not supporting that. As a matter of fact, we have made,
allowed them into Alberta, sir.
Well, again, I with great respect, you misrepresent, and I'm sure you do it inadvertently, but you misrepresent what we were actually doing in Alberta. We were testing defensive capabilities and looking for the best technologies for the Canadian Armed Forces in order to defend our country and our troops. Now, but you also said that we defend or we support, the death of innocents. And that's absolutely untrue. Canada has taken a very strong position with respect to calling for an immediate ceasefire, calling for protection of innocent lives, for improving access of humanitarian aid into the region. And so I think your characterization of my country or our country's support for those activities is not correct. And in fact, I think we have condemned those actions and called for them to cease.
You may condemn them in public, but certainly what's being allowed in terms of happening in this country, there was prizes awarded in this competition, Minister. Last time you came to this committee, I asked about the arms trade treaty commitments amidst this war. When I asked you if Canada's interoperability with allies is more important than our commitment to human rights and international law, you said of course not. However, you've taken no steps to stop Canada's participation in the Lockheed Martin F-35 fighter jet program. You are making Canadians complicit in this genocide, and your defense policy update spoke about making it easier to procure within the American military industrial complex. The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to immediately halt its siege on Rafah. Will you commit to applying our arms trade treaty responsibilities today to ensure that our tax dollars are not supporting this siege?
Well, if I may, I think conflating the tragedy that's unfolding in Gaza with our acquisition of a new fighter jet for the Canadian Armed Forces is quite frankly unclear to me as to how those two are actually coexisting or in any way mutually supportive. I think there is making sure that the Canadian Armed Forces get the best capability to do the important job we ask of them of defending Canada, defending Canada's interest in fulfilling our obligations to our international coalition partners in NORAD and NATO and in other parts of the world is our responsibility to make sure our people have the best equipment. There was a very robust procurement process.
They are our responsibility. However, there are more options than just one, and certainly being complicit and not abiding by our own trade treaty obligations is also a decision that is clearly made. It is a choice, Minister.
Well, we've obviously made the choice to acquire the F-35 after a very rigorous and long procurement process. And as I shared with this committee earlier, that we were actually working hard and have money here to facilitate the delivery of the first 16 of those.
1 minute, please.
The Liberal caucus, of which you are a part, voted in favor of our motion in March calling on the ceasing of further authorization and transfer of arms exports in Israel. We know that the majority of Canadian exports to Israel's military are in space and satellite technology. So I was shocked earlier this month when I asked within this committee, Space Canada and MDA Space, what communications they've received from your department and government on this. They have not seen any promised notes to exporters, nor have they received any communications from your department on their prospective sales in Israel. Will your government issue this notice?
Yeah. First of all, the people that you were speaking to are not the people that are involved in those sales. It requires, under a very rigorous Canadian military export permit regime that is operated by GAC. It is the Global Affairs that administers that regime, and I'm advised by GAC that they have not issued a permit since a permit for export of any military equipment or technology to Israel since the October 7th.
And the fact that they have absolutely no indication.
Thank you, Ms. Madison. We're now on to a 5-minute round. Mr. Kelly, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Minister. On December 7th, you told this committee that Canada had quadrupled its artillery shell order and that those shells would be delivered the following year, 2024. On April 15th, I asked you when this commitment to quadruple the ammunition order would be fulfilled. You didn't answer the question, so I'll ask again, on what date will Canada take delivery of the additional production of 155 millimeter shells, particularly the M795 variant?
Yeah, I recently went to the factory to talk to them about the delivery of existing orders, but we also talked, I think very importantly, those factories in Canada, and I've met with them all now, and one of the things they told us is that they needed to increase their production lines. They needed to secure...
Chance to answer this question in April and you didn't. Can you answer it now today? On what date? If you don't know, just say you don't know and we'll move on.
With great respect, and it doesn't matter how simply you ask the question, it doesn't make it a simple question.
But you gave me a simple answer. You said it was going to be this year, so we're already in May.
Well, but again, the delivery of munitions from those factories is limited by their production capabilities. We have come through in the DPU and in this budget, which I'm hoping you'll get an opportunity to vote for.
Okay, so I'll take that. I take that you don't have a date. You don't have a date, so we'll move on.
And we now have money in the budget.
Okay, thank you, Minister.
To offer them
on what date will Canada
to acquire those munitions?
On what date will Canada acquire ground-based air defenses to defend critical infrastructure, including our own troops in Latvia?
And first of all, a contract was signed for the troops in Latvia for ground-based air defense systems. That contract was signed about 5 months ago, and they will be delivered when we ramp up to brigade. I'm told the delivery schedule, and perhaps it's a question that our officials might be able to answer and give you a more precise date, but I'm assured that that capability will be delivered when we go to brigade strength in 2026.
Okay, so your predecessor misled Canadians and said 14 months ago that an air defense system was en route to Ukraine, and now you've earlier in your testimony today admitted that it is part of a back order of a production order.
I missed your question. I thought you were talking the air defense systems, that the ground-to-air air defense systems for Latvia, and then you brought up
because Minister, you have a credibility problem. Your government has a credibility problem when you announce delivery or announce that something has been acquired. You had already announced in the case of the defense system that we were procuring for Ukraine 14 months ago. You said it was your predecessor said it was en route, but your testimony today is, and we know that it is not even produced yet. So can you give us a date on which Canada is going to acquire the vital ground defense system for our troops in Latvia and other critical infrastructure?
Well, and with respect to Latvia, the contracts are signed, and those munitions are now in production. We have been provided with a delivery date which coincides with us ramping up to brigade strength in 2026. There are other munitions, by the way, and other contracts that we've signed for anti-tank missiles and anti-drone systems, but the ground-to-air missile defense, the contract is signed, and the delivery schedule for those munitions is scheduled for 2026.
Okay, thank you. Your DPU talks about exploring options for modernizing our artillery. Assuming that the NDP allows these estimates to pass, on what date will Canada receive expanded artillery platforms?
I think I can assume that you and members of your party will not vote for any defense spending, because your record speaks for itself. Deeds speak.
For this government, we will vote non-confidence in this government at every opportunity.
And therefore, we've introduced a budget that actually provides industry with exactly what they said they required from us: investment in production and the money that provided the certainty of long-term contracts. Once this budget passed, we have already begun the process, and we will enter into those negotiations with our Canadian industries. That'll create Canadian jobs, it'll increase Canadian production, and it will deliver for the Canadian Armed Forces the munitions that they need.
Your DPU says you will explore. I support getting the troops the kit that they need, Minister, and I'd like to know if these estimates contain any certainty around or a date or funding authorization for the replacement and modernization of our artillery.
30 seconds or less, please.
Yeah, there's money here and in the upcoming budget that we've presented. The dates will be determined as quickly as we can pass that. And so, again, although I know you're not going to vote for it, if you could just get out of the way and let us bring that forward, then we'll get it passed.
All right. So are a critical part of maritime defense. Is there anything in these estimates to replace our 40-year-old submarines?
No, because, and perhaps I was unclear, but when we said we had some work to do with respect to submarines, we need submarines. We've got to replace the Victoria-class fleet. They're old, they're unserviceable, they can't do the job. So we've got work to do to replace them.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
And that work is underway.
Thank you, Minister. Madame Lalonde, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I want to talk about two things. So good morning, Minister. It's a pleasure to have you with us. The external monitor, Madame Thérien, recently released a report which illustrated some of the progress that the NDCAF have made towards cultural evolution. But she does note numerous times that there's still much more work to be done, particularly in streamlining of the grievance process. And I have to say, Minister, we did hear here in this committee some of the barrier and some of the aggravated component of this grievance process. I would like to know a little bit about what's your interpretation of this report from the external monitor, and is the NDCAF effectively equipped to deal with the shortcomings that she is actually raising?
Actually, Thank you. I'm very grateful for the report of the external monitor. And she and I have had, in addition to her report, we've had a number of conversations about her concerns on the grievance process. In January of 18th of this year, I approved authorizing General Carignan to resolve all grievances, have the authority to resolve grievances for amounts less than $25,000. That was actually the vast majority of these grievances. Really great news. In a 2-month period, General Carignan reports that more than 70% of those grievances have now been resolved. And I think it's really important that we be as efficient and quick as possible. People have been waiting a very long time for resolution of these matters. And I think that's because that takes a vast majority, a large number of these grievances and deals with them in a more appropriate and timely way. It will also enable us to dedicate the resources for the more complex ones. But again, I think the Madame Thérien's report was very useful advice in helping us focus on the things that were important that for the members, and she was hearing very clearly is what we've been hearing from the members, a level of frustration on getting these matters resolved. I would also point out, as Madame Justice Therien did, there are a number of things in our legislation, Bill C-66, with respect to the independence of judicial actors, a number of things that are often form part of these grievances. And so, again, I would come back to this committee and ask when we can bring that bill to this committee. There's really important work to be done here on it, but I think that there are things in that legislation which I think we can all agree will be very helpful to the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces.
I'll agree with you, and certainly I know how important bringing this bill, so I want to say thank you for this. And I know that you mean right in saying that you're looking forward to see this bill coming to this committee in advancing and making it even maybe stronger. So I appreciate this. I want to take you back a little bit of this conversation that we had about our 2% and the DPU, but I also, we tend to forget, and maybe some of our partners and our allies forget, the strong commitment on NORAD. So as you mentioned, this particular estimate in this budget that we know, unfortunately, some member in the House of Commons will vote against, which is a direct impact in providing that operational readiness that you have mentioned. Maybe share some thoughts about where and why it is so important that we pass this budget as early as possible.
The things that I noted that the 23 senators who wrote a letter to the Prime Minister last week, one of the things they did not acknowledge in the letter, but I think it's an important thing. I was down in Washington 2 weeks ago. I met with the Secretary of Defense. I met with a number of other legislators there as well. And when we talked about Canada's new investment in defense, I think they were very encouraged by it. But in particular, and I don't like to quote him, he speaks well for himself, but the commander of NORAD and has talked a lot very publicly about the nearly $40 billion Canada is investing in NORAD modernization, the acquisition of new capabilities, new capital equipment as part of that, and frankly with the introduction of our new defense policy, again, he was very supportive and even complimentary to the work that we are doing. I think it's important as well. We acknowledge in our own defense policy update we're doing a great deal. We have more to do. We're going to do more. But when you're spending taxpayer dollars, you got to do it right. You got to do it well. And that means giving the Canadian Armed Forces the opportunity and the time to define their requirements and then to work through our rigorous but necessary procurement processes to get the best value for Canadian tax dollars. And so, like I said, we're increasing our defense spending by 27% next year over this. it's going to be really challenging for us to spend that money well, but we're absolutely committed to doing it.
15 seconds, please.
Well, I'll just say thank you very much, Minister, and certainly if I don't have a chance, I would like to thank Deputy Minister Matthews for him being so available to us in this committee. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Lalonde. Madame Michaud, 2.5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Minister, you spoke about investments that will be made very shortly, but in September 2023, your government announced important cuts. Back then, you said it wouldn't have impacts on our operational capacities, but the Chief of Defense Staff said it was impossible to reduce defense budget by $1 billion without it having any consequences. Nevertheless, you announced new investments in your new policies, so it seems contradictory what we hear. And the Chief of Defense Staff has said himself that for him, it's difficult to understand all these contradictory statements. Maybe this confusion stems from a lack of vision coming from the department. Can you reassure the forces and tell us clearly what's going on? Will there be cuts over the next 2 years, or will there be more investment over the next few years for the future? What's going on?
I stand by my statement. We're increasing defense spending next year over this year by 27%. And that includes the Treasury Board's refocusing of spending. But one of the things when you're spending Canadian taxpayer dollars that I think is absolutely incumbent upon us, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're spending their dollars well and to look and make sure that we're producing real value for every dollar we invest. And so it is entirely appropriate for the entire public service and every bureaucracy to look at how they're spending money, particularly on things like executive travel or consultant services or even some professional services. And I say some because some of them are absolutely essential to our members and our capabilities. But we are in the net increasing our defense spending by 27%. And by the way, those refocusing of spending, it's not supposed to be easy. It's hard. That's why we do it, because it's hard and it's necessary. And so it has been, certainly been challenges to ask, the military and the Department of National Defense have been doing things a certain way for a long time. And just to go back and check and making sure that we're producing real value for every dollar we invest in defense it's the job. And so we're doing that job. And at the same time, we're very, very significantly increasing the amount of money that they'll be made available to them to get the job done.
Michaud, Ms. Masson, 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. Minister, last time you appeared here, we talked briefly about the investment in Arctic infrastructure for dual-use programs and projects. We heard directly from General Wayne Eyre, who called his time being stuck in Cambridge Bay as another war story. Today, I've just brought and signed a letter with my colleague NDP MP for Nunavut, Laurie Idlut. Cambridge Bay needs their runway paved and expanded to tackle their serious food crisis and to have robust access to health care. I would like to give you that letter today, but I would like you to commit and ask you that you commit to reading it and consider designating Cambridge Bay as a northern operational support hub.
First of all, I'll absolutely commit to reading it. I was in Nunavut 3 weeks ago. I met with all the northern premiers. I was in Iqaluit. We had conversations about multi-use infrastructure investments in the north. There are a number of, I think the needs of the north are very obvious and clear to us all, and I think I take your advocate. Well, and with respect to Cambridge Bay, first of all, the money that in defense, there are other investments that also need to be made in infrastructure. Some of that's transportation, some of that's the northern affairs. But the investments that we need to make from the defense standpoint is, first of all, I've got to work with the Northern Territories, but also with Indigenous leadership in the north to determine the best place for us to put our assets in order to do the job of defending the north. At the same time, I think there's an extraordinary opportunity, which you highlight, to actually increase our investment in infrastructure that will be mutually beneficial to the people that live in those communities. Because an airpipe runway, for example, can also be used to bring in other transport of goods or medical evacuations. There's a whole bunch of mutually beneficial things that we can do that'll be aligned. I'll happily read the letter. And I will also undertake, we're going to continue to work with the territorial governments, with northern communities, with northern representatives, and in particular with Indigenous communities, because It's their land. We benefit by consultation with them. We'll work really closely with them, and I invite you to continue to advocate around that, and your colleague as well.
Ms. Matheson,
I actually have 15 seconds.
I know you have 15 seconds.
And you've given other time to other members to expand.
I am trying to get back on track, otherwise we won't get through this round.
At my expense.
Do your 15 seconds.
Thank you. Canada had the worst wildfire season year on record last year. Experts have predicted that this year is worse. It actually is never stopped. The DPU didn't acknowledge Operation Lentis and the importance on that, considering we're facing those climate catastrophes fueled by inaction on climate change. Why do you think that the status quo was enough?
Unfortunately, Ms. Matheson's 15 seconds expired a while back. We'll move on to Mr. Allison. 5 minutes, please.
Chat about that later.
Mr. Allison.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and
Hi, Dean.
to our minister. Thank you very much for being here. I got a question for you. Lieutenant General Andrew Leslie has talked about how unprepared we are, and as a former chief of staff for our NATO, for our allies, and for the work he's done even as elected member into your party. I would like to say his one comment here. I'd like you to get your response that this current Prime Minister of Canada is not serious about defense, full stop.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have a great deal of respect for Andy, and he's a friend of mine. We've been friends and colleagues for a long time. And I have respect for his opinion, but respectfully, I would disagree with him on that. The Prime Minister has been, I think, demonstrated a remarkable seriousness on defense. And during his time as Prime Minister, we have more than doubled defense spending, and we've just approved a defense policy that will, in fact, triple our defense spending over the term of its 5 years. But even beyond that, the Prime Minister has also made it clear that we still need to do more, and we're going to do more with respect to integrated air missile defense, submarines, et cetera.
Thank you,
so
Mr.
I would just point that out to my very good friend and respected colleague, Andy Leslie. Deeds speak, and the Prime Minister's deeds, I think, speak well.
I think from his experience, his Lieutenant General actually matters a lot in terms of what he's able to bring to the table. He also said that a large number of his cabinet ministers are not serious about defense either. So I'll leave those statements for now. But one of the things he's challenged with is the whole issue of preparedness, and a lot of my colleagues have talked about this. He talks about the Arctic, and we've had people in here to talk about the Arctic, and he said just in terms of numbers, there's 22 professional men and women in the U.S. Armed Forces based in the Arctic, mainly in Alaska, and there's about 30 to 35,000 Russian armed forces based in the Arctic, but Canada only has 300 people. So we talk about preparation. What's your response to our Arctic, which is obviously a very important area for us in terms of...
Really good news, Dean. I'll go read our new defense policy update, Our North Strong and Free. That's our response to the Arctic, and it talks about the necessity of investing and persistently deploying Canadian Armed Forces members there. We've talked a lot about in NORAD modernization, but now also in the DPU, about the really important focus that we have to have in defending the continent and defending our country, particularly from emerging threats. In the first part of that document, like I said, I would invite you to take a look at it. I don't disagree, by the way. The fact that our ships are nearly 40 years old, some of the planes our Air Force has been flying in are 40 years old. Those things really, I think, demonstrate generations of ill preparedness. But our response to that is we're investing in new fighter planes. We're investing in new supply ships. We're investing in new combat support ships. So we're going to be investing in new submarines, and we're putting new capabilities in the north.
Thank you. I just got a couple minutes left here. So in talking about preparation for operational readiness, we've seen CBC actually reported that there's been changes to the training force by budget cuts that could leave the military less ready for a fight. And all this while mere 61% of the force are ready for operations. So I guess my question is, with budget cuts, looking at operational readiness, how do we explain, we're sending people for training over in Lafayette and a number of places where we don't have enough trainers to train people to fly here in Canada. I would love to talk about the operational preparedness that we have of troops on the ground, plus also what we're dealing with here back home in our own fighters.
Good news there, Dean, because in Latvia, we're working in a coalition environment. There's 10 different countries that are working with Canada. Canada's leading in Latvia. There's a new training base being developed there, and Our soldiers, a decision was made by the Canadian Armed Forces that the best place for them to complete their training was in that coalition environment, using the equipment and working side by side with our coalition partners there. And frankly, that was an operational decision which I agree with, because it just seems like a smart way to get the job done. The challenge that we are facing is not that we don't have great trainers or even great training capability in this country. It's our staffing problem, and that, I think, is job one. And if you're suggesting that we need to do a much better job of onboarding people into the Canadian Armed Forces, last year 70,000 people applied to join the Canadian Armed Forces, and just a little over 4,000 of them actually got in. That's not good enough. We have to do better, and we're going to do better.
And finally, how much? 20 seconds? I guess finally, in terms of the Arctic, when do you see us having more troops ready to be there?
Well, the work has already begun. We're in the north already, and I've also met with the Ranger program with almost 2,600 people right across the north. Now, they're not military, but they're really important eyes and ears, and they perform a really important function in the military, and we're going to continue to support them as well. We just a couple of weeks ago, broke ground on a new facility for JTFN in Yellowknife. We're already beginning to make those investments. And in fairness, the policy document just came out. The Canadian Armed Forces is clearly turning their strong attention and their capabilities to making sure that we're ready in the north.
Minister.
Sorry.
I don't know who's the worst one at this table. Like, gee, it's a neck and neck among the whole lot of you. Final question, Madame Lapointe. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Minister. I note that a significant portion of the main estimates is set aside for major capital projects, and that it would include the Canadian Multi-Mission Aircraft Procurement Project as well as the Future Fighter Capability Project. Can you speak to this committee about the significance of these major investments? And just as importantly, how are we ensuring that we are procuring the right capabilities for our forces at the best price and value for Canadians?
Yeah, thanks very much, Viv. And I'll just highlight some of the really important and challenging work that was done on the multi-mission aircraft project that was done. First of all, the Air Force clearly defined their requirements to replace the C-140s, which have been a great plane crewed by extraordinary people, but in service for a little over 40 years. And it was time to replace them. And because of the important work, they're primarily submarine hunters. And so the Armed Forces very clearly defined their requirements, and then our team at D&D went out and looked in the marketplace to see what was available. And there was only one plane that was available that could be delivered in a timely way within the 2-year frame that the Air Force had defined as their requirement. And so we went through a process, and frankly, in an ideal situation, I think we would have spent a lot more time working with Canadian aeronautic industry in particular. But in this case, time is a bit of a commodity, and it wasn't really available to us. And so a decision was made, I think the right decision, in my opinion, the only decision, to acquire the Poseidon P-8 as the multi-mission aircraft for the Royal Canadian Air Force. We as well have been working with them and making sure that we have the supply planes that are available so that we can fuel our aircraft on long range missions. We're also investing in an RPAS system of unmanned drones for the high Arctic as well. And so, first of all, what is required? It's not a matter of some political person going through a shopping list. It's about the Canadian Armed Forces telling us what they need. They do that in consultation with all of our allies. They look at their needs and requirements and the job that they have to do, and they tell us what they need. And then we've got great people who go into the marketplace and work through the important procurement processes to make sure that, first of all, we get the Armed Forces what they need, but just as importantly, we get real value for Canadian taxpayer dollars. So when you're spending other people's money, you should do it carefully. And we have to be able to demonstrate to them that we have gone out and got the best deal possible and acquired the best capability for the Armed Forces. That's the job. It takes time, and it can be frustrating because you've also got to ramp up production. And sometimes the delivery of these things, the announcement that we've signed a contract is important, but the delivery of these things is every bit as important, and that's why there's also a huge amount of work that needs to get done in order to make sure that the delivery stays on schedule and stays on budget, and that the Armed Forces get what they need.
Thank you, Minister. Can you share with this committee about the new emerging threats in the cyber domain, and are there any targeted or specific measures around the cyber threat in the main estimates to address these?
Yeah, there is actually a pretty significant investment in the main estimates, but also in the DPU. In the Communications Security Establishment itself, and I'm joined here by the Chief today, Chief Xavier. I would point out, first of all, the threat environment is evolving and becoming far more concerning with each passing day. We are seeing the activities of certain adversaries, notably China, but also Russia and other adversaries as well, that are constantly attacking critical infrastructure and our systems. I think the CSE does a pretty remarkable job of protecting our systems, but what we've seen is those same adversaries are now targeting some of our northern regional governments and some of our provincial and municipal governments as well, and other forms of critical infrastructure. And so we are investing fairly significantly through these main estimates, but also in the DPU to increase, I think, what is already an extraordinary capability. You know, and Viv, I'd be remiss if I didn't share with this committee, I've had a number of conversations with our allies, particularly in Five Eyes, but also in NATO. Canada's cyber capability is considered first in class right around the world. It's something that I think, you know, it's hard to sort of brag about this because most people, I think, we don't want to scare people, but at the same time, our people are doing remarkable work. Their work is valued by all of our allies. It's one of the reasons we're making even more significant, because they're demonstrating real value for every dollar we spend at CSE. And we believe that by spending more dollars, as is reflected in these estimates and in our new DPU, is going to produce real value for Canadians.
Thank you, Ms. Blount. With that, we will have to bring our first hour to a close. Thank you, Minister, for your contribution to this animated conversation. Yes, and we appreciate your appearance here from time to time, sometimes more than other times. So with that, we will suspend, let the minister leave, and then Mr. Matthews and his team will continue on with the next hour. opening statement, and do you wish to introduce anybody that is now at your table?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very quickly, I think the minister already covered it, but we have Mr. Crosby, Ms. Crosby, respectively in charge of procurement, as well as our Chief Financial Officer, the Vice Chief, and Madame Xavier, as well as her Chief Financial Officer, Monsieur Saint-Pierre. And with that, let's get on with the questions.
Okay, Mr. Bazan opens with a 6 minutes round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, I know a number of you are either retiring or moving on. I want to thank you all for your service and for your time at Department of National Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces, and for serving Canada and serving our troops. Although it's starting to look like with so many people running away, it looks like a ship might be sinking. But no? Okay. Everybody's man overboard. But anyway, I want to go back to the issue of readiness, which has been a story. And a major concern is that we are now sending our forces into Latvia without that battle group battalion level training that we routinely have done at Wainwright. So my concern is, how is this impacting our ability? I know we're saying it's great to exercise with our allies, but I can tell you that our allies are going out there battle ready. And I question whether or not our guys and gals are in tip-top fighting condition when they don't have that time to train we have routinely done in the past. General?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. Certainly, I would absolutely agree with you. Readiness is critically important for your ability to be able to execute on operations, and you must be ready to be able to execute on operations. The mechanisms through which you get ready and are ready, I think, are different depending upon the organization that you're part of, be it the Air Force, the Army. We know the key components to readiness, which are personnel, equipment, training, and the sustainment elements that you need to be able to deliver on operations. And certainly, I would say we have traditionally used the series of exercises in the West as one of the training and readiness functions for the Canadian Army as they were moving into their high readiness phase going forward. The stand-up and the move of the battle group to brigade in Latvia with the many partners that we have over there is also causing us to reassess what is the best way to do both the individual and then collective training that needs to be done to be able to operate. We have heard previously that it had quite an impact on families.
We talk about readiness, and the forces are only sitting at 61% readiness, and the amount of equipment that we have available that is ready and able to use is now under 60%. And we're always supposed to have, at least one battalion at high readiness, and another battalion training up to go into high readiness as a constant circulation, just for protection of Canada and being ready to deploy if called upon. So if we aren't training up our current battalion and brigade group that is in Latvia, where are we sitting with the level of readiness within the forces that are sitting domestically?
So you are correct. We have people sitting at different levels of readiness. As you come off of high readiness and you return back into a lower state of readiness, that's sort of a bit of a reconstitution time for people to do training, for equipment to be repaired, that sort of thing. The next group are on the road to high readiness, while another group are sitting at high readiness moving forward. And so this type of I would say, a progression towards readiness is for the Army, how they do the managed readiness program that they have. Whether they're...
Army at high readiness, and that we are definitely beyond those numbers. How many fighter pilots do we have today?
I'm afraid I couldn't tell you exactly the number of fighter pilots that we have.
Would you be able to get that information to the committee?
Absolutely.
If you can get that information, can you ballpark it?
I would say there's currently less fighter pilots available than the Commander of the Air Force would currently wish to be able to do both the missions that we have today and the training for the transition to the new F-35.
Yeah, so we're at 40, more than 40, less than 40?
I would not be able to give you the accurate number.
Okay. General Eyre recently complained that the use of military personnel in fighting wildfires in Canada has become, in some cases, wickedly wasteful. And he went on to say, I made it quite clear to other departments that our capacity to do what we did last year is not the same, especially with reduced readiness and increased deployments to Latvia. And he told senior officers on a video conference on April 23rd, we're not going to have the same forces available for the scale and duration of response. So what are we doing to correct this in making sure that we can get back to a high level of readiness just from standpoint of doing what the Canadian Armed Forces is meant to do, which is be prepared to fight? And then what's the long-term goal here on supporting domestic operations through Operation Lentis?
You're 100%. The Canadian Armed Forces does need to be prepared and ready to fight, and that's that mission which we can do that others cannot within the environment. That being said, Canada has always turned to its Canadian Armed Forces in times of extraordinary crisis to be able to support domestically, and we have IRUs that are established within the provinces to have that mission going forward. It is challenging, and last summer's wildfires certainly did see Canadian Armed Forces members deployed for quite an extended period of time, longer than we had previously seen.
General, can I just ask a quick question? If you don't have time to answer, if you can provide the information to committee or answer it in a follow-up question from one of my colleagues, is can you give us the current recruitment numbers that we have in the Canadian Armed Forces, Air Force, Navy, and Army, and then also do that from the reserve standpoint? My understanding is that we're just barely treading water right now, and we're still over 15,000 troops short.
Okay, thank you. Madame Lambropoulos, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for being here with us to answer some questions today. So Minister Blair spoke about a $1 billion ask for cyber mandates. And so I'm wondering if you could share, with the fact that in the future we will be seeing more and more cyber threats, and this is going to be a bigger issue. How exactly, can you specify how the money will be spent, and also what the communications security establishment's role is in responding to cyber threats and cyber incidents?
Chair, thank you for the question. Real pleasure to be here to answer the question. So yes, in the mains, we have been given an increase of almost $76 million. However, as was stated by the minister, the departmental defense update, the defense policy update, gives us an additional almost $1 billion over the next 5 years investing in our cyber defense and in our foreign cyber operations. Part of our role in terms of what we do as an organization, we have a 5-part mandate, and part of that mandate includes the cybersecurity information assurance cyber defense landscape, and we take that role extremely seriously. We play that role in the sense that we do it for Government of Canada systems. We also pay attention to that for critical infrastructure, for private sector, and anything else that the nation needs us to do in support of cyber defense. What we really work hard at is really promoting cyber resilience, and so that's where we do a lot of that work in partnership with the critical infrastructure, with the Government of Canada, with private sector, with municipalities and provinces and territories. So that is part of the role that we play. In terms of the investments that are made specifically in the mains, $20 million of that funding is associated to the investment made related to the Indo-Pacific strategy, where CSC will have a role it plays, specifically linked to signals intelligence and the foreign intelligence that we'll continue to provide to senior decision makers. But as well, it's also ongoing operations for the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, which is our cyber center, which provides that role that I was speaking to, in particular related to information assurance and cyber defense for Canada and critical infrastructure sectors. So we do see that our role continues to be important. We do see that cyber itself plays a role in warfare, and that is why it is good that we have the foreign cyber operation authorities that we have, both in active and defense cyber authorities that are authorized by the minister through ministerial authorities and supported by the Department of Foreign Affairs.
So I guess when you say resilience, you're really talking about prevention, right? Like ways of ensuring that our systems can't be breached, I guess?
Correct. So one of the things we really work hard at is promoting various ways in which one can protect themselves, and we have the cyber.gc.ca website, which really does that in terms of looking at it from an individual all the way to critical infrastructure. And no matter what type of person you are, coming in as someone who's very well aware of what are the cyber threats that could have, to somebody who's less aware, that's what that website is helpful for. But that's in addition to all of the partnerships and information sessions that we offer to critical infrastructure sectors in particular, where we know that critical infrastructure are at risk because of all that we've seen from the various publications we've put out and what we've learned from the war in Ukraine. We know that critical infrastructure is at risk, and we've put out many guidelines and publications out with regards to this. And we know that we need to continue to build that resilience so that when, because the answer is more when rather than if an incident may occur, we ensure that we can recover quickly, which is what that resilience really means.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. You also mentioned the Indo-Pacific strategy, and Minister Blair also spoke about Operation Horizon, which I believe is tied to that strategy and to that region. I understand the importance of Canada playing an important role in that region and in the conflict there. Can you speak to what Canada's military presence in that region will look like over the next year?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, I can speak to that question. As part of the Indo-Pacific strategy, Canada agreed to increase its military presence in the region from a naval perspective by having 3 deployments into the region over every year moving forward. That is for us currently with the Montreal to be followed by the Vancouver this summer and then the Ottawa later on this fall. In addition to that, there's capacity building exercises with partners within the region that we engage with, training and activities that also support the women, peace and security initiatives that we believe are important for all of us as allies and partners to be talking and engaging on. And so these types of engagements, from capacity building, deployments with our allies, participating in exercises and sharing our experiences, these are all military activities that you will see this year and in subsequent years as well.
Ms. Lambropoulos, Madame Michaud, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I have a few questions regarding regarding Operation Lentis. It's not a secret that over the last few years, there's been more requests to the armed forces to act when there are natural disasters in Canada. This seems to increase, and it's not even in the numbers. I'm talking about the pandemic, of course, as well. So we can believe that there will be internal emergencies, Canadian domestic emergencies, that will require the intervention of the forces. In the departmental plan, it says that the forces are a last recourse when there are domestic emergencies. Is it still the vision within the department as we speak, even though we have to acknowledge that Canada will be faced with more natural disasters over the coming years? And what is the proportion of investments here in Canada? I'm sure when we're talking about investment in forces in Canada, we're thinking about those natural disasters. But there's also all those strategies regarding cybersecurity to protect Canada from interference from abroad. So can you clarify for us basically how the investments are divided? How much money internationally, how much money domestically? Maybe I can start an answer, and I'm sure my counterpart will be able to follow up if needed, and Ms. Xavier as well. Both are possible, of course. And it's true that the CAF are a last recourse when they are natural disasters.
The demand on the armed forces for domestic responses is as manageable as possible. If they're needed, they will be there. But when you think about forest fires, I'll let my colleague, Madame Xavier, talk about cyber protection, but forest fires in particular, you have to look at a whole of government and multi-levels of government type solution. Better planning, better preparedness, leaning on civil society. So when, once all of those tools are used, if there is still something to be done, then the armed forces will be the last resort, and they will get called, without a doubt. And then once they are called, we want to make sure that they're staying for only as long as needed. And once their critical work is done, they can move on and reconstitute and do the other things. It also speaks to reconstitution for the armed forces in general. The more numbers we have, the more at the ready, the more we're able to respond. But I think it starts with a broader whole of government, multiple levels of government, as well as civil society, and how we best protect ourselves and prepare ourselves for whatever the domestic urgency is. Vice, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think Deputy Mr. Chair, he's pretty much covered most issues. As the esteemed colleague said, we are there as a force of last resort when needed, and I think Canada and the Canadian Armed Forces have always come when the call has come in a true crisis, as we have in evacuations in the north as well. Thank you.
Regarding cybersecurity, I'll answer your question. As we said earlier, we recognize that it's paramount that we build resiliency in our infrastructure, because it is accurate if, for example, in the hydro sector or in the energy sector, if anything goes on, this will have a direct impact on citizens of Canada. So that's why we're working extremely closely with these critical infrastructure sectors so that they understand what the threats are. We ask them to subscribe to our services so that they're aware of the latest threats, because we have access to a lot of information that we need to communicate to them. But we also ask them that they communicate with us when they are victims of a cyber incident so that we can support them accordingly. We meet with a lot of organizations on a regular basis, mostly in the energy sector, in the hydro sector, in the financial sector, telecom sector. We meet with all these partners because they are critical infrastructures, and we need to be able to help them and build resiliency should there be something going on in a province or territory. And of course, we work very closely with all provinces and territories to better educate them so that they know how they can support their infrastructure as well. Thank you very much for your answer. In fact, regarding natural disasters, I understand that you're there as a last recourse. It's not your priority, because this could have an impact on military capabilities, also on recruitment as well, I'm sure, and we know there's a shortage of staff. So in some cases, well, in all cases rather, will we always prioritize national and international operations? We understand that geopolitical situation has an impact with the various operations that Canada is partaking of around the world. Is it possible that sooner or later there won't be any CAF staff for domestic emergencies, for example, floods or forest fires? Is what is going on at the international level be prioritized all the time?
It is a constant prioritization of where is the demand coming from for the Canadian Armed Forces services. What is it the government would like us to do? What have we made commitments towards? How would we manage crises that arise and come forward? And what tools are available to us to support that moving forward? The training that's required, often that is so helpful in natural disasters and in emergencies, is just a formed group who can communicate, who can move themselves to a location and be prepared to be involved in a domestic disaster response. And that doesn't necessarily require the high level of readiness in training and skill sets that are needed for
have to
deployed
leave the
operations.
answer there. Ms. Masson, 6 minutes.
Thank you. In Justice Arbour's report, she clearly warned about conflict of interest within the Office of the Integrated Complaint and Conflict Management Structure. She made that clear that the office cannot investigate and provide advice to both the senior leadership and survivors, and their structural position makes them an easy threat for chain of command interference. The Ottawa Citizen reported last week on the horrific failure of justice by the department. Officer X, an unnamed Navy officer, had repeated complaints filed and investigated within the CAF and to military military police going back to 2006. An internal ICCM report then found that this information was bundled up with 14 years of multiple allegations and MP investigations against Officer X that had resulted in zero action. These allegations reached as high as the head of the Royal Canadian Navy, Vice Admiral Topshee, without any action taken. So we wouldn't even know about this incident if the report wasn't leaked to the media. That harassment continues to date. It's worsening for those who are coming forward and who are calling it out. And for all we know, there are so many more horrific cases being covered up. So can you tell the committee whether or not the department has reviewed this internal ICCM report and what steps have been taken to get justice for Officer X's victims?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, I guess I want to reinforce that we think any type of misconduct within the department is something that we take seriously, and there shouldn't be instances in which members' complaints of inappropriate behavior or conduct should go ignored. As it pertains to the Officer X, I can't tell you that I know the specific ICCM report to which you refer. It did not come to me directly as part of this process, but this issue has been looked at quite closely within the department. I can't disclose details exactly, specifically about this particular case because there are some privacy considerations that are part of that, but we do take all allegations very, very seriously.
Deputy Minister, I would assume that you would have seen the report, or what can you say about this?
I have not seen the report. My understanding is there's a process underway, and as the Vice has already said, can't share more because of privacy, but no, I have not seen the detailed report in question. Certainly aware of the file, though.
The cover-ups by chain of command in the department on Officer X are the latest example, of course, of barriers that survivors face. They need an independent outside office to turn to when they're wronged in this way. They shouldn't, in my opinion, be asked to turn to the ICCM for help when they know that the chain of command is actively covering up an incident, especially to that same monitoring board that is providing advice to the chain of command. They need the independent external watchdog, which I have a bill that aims to do that. But in the interim, CAF members and DND employees need that champion within the Office of the Ombudsman. So I'm certainly concerned about the fact that during testimony, the current Ombudsman, Gregory Lick, talked to us about finding his replacement. He announced his retirement. He certainly will be missed, and it takes an active, robust search for his replacement. So we've been told that this hasn't started, this replacement search, given the fact that there's so much going on in terms of the CAF throughout his tenure. When can we expect that process at least to start to find a new ombuds?
So I cannot give you an exact date, Mr. Chair. The work to launch the search, it has started, but the search is not yet launched. There will be interim measures put in place to ensure continuity while a replacement for Mr. Lick is found.
There's been a concern, of course, that there would be a return to previous applicants, or that there wouldn't be a new search taking place. Is that currently the case?
The process in terms of how it's followed to select Mr. Lick's replacement it's an appointment that is outside of my control, but all I will share is the work to launch the search for a new candidate has started, and there'll be an interim measure put in place.
The minister earlier touched on this in terms of Madame Lalonde's question on Bill C-66, which will enact our Justice Arbour's Recommendation 5. But we know that correcting the justice system isn't just about bringing that justice for so many women that were failed by the institution. In fact, we've seen so many cases recently of women having their cases stayed due to CAF delays in transferring files. Other women have reported their cases being rejected. What is being done by the department to make amends for current and historic cases that happened before this bill will be enacted?
Maybe a couple of thoughts here, Mr. Chair, and the Vice may wish to jump in. Number one, lots of reasons why cases do not get transferred, and the member has outlined a few of them, but there's others as well. I'm not aware of any measures in place beyond the numerous class actions that are underway to look backwards. This is a going forward change that we are looking forward to implementing.
The Defense Policy Update signals changes to military equipment procurement. $10.2 billion in spending for infrastructure and maintenance, $300 million for the Canadian Forces Housing Agency, but there's no commitment on reforms to the outsourcing and contracting practices for those maintenance services. UNDE and PIPSI leadership came to this committee and said that the government has no meaningful value for money analysis on these contracts, and the Defence Construction Canada procurement practices mirror the ongoing ArriveCan scandal. The department spent $5 billion on contracting out services instead of on public servants.
Ms. Masson, you're well past your time.
Okay, I'll pick it up later. Thank you.
With that, colleagues, I'm reliably informed that we'll be voting at 1:06, which means bells at 12:36, which means that we basically have a 15-minute round and then the vote on the estimates. So, Mr. Falk, I'm sorry to say, 3 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, even for those 3 minutes. Thank you to all of you for coming to committee and for your service to our country. Thank you very much. I'd like to begin with Chief Xavier for a moment. Our partnership with Five Eyes is extremely important. I think it's benefited us, and we've been a huge benefit to them. The minister earlier reported that your department, CSE, is first in class. We're the best of the best. We're as good as it gets. Were we invited to participate in AUKUS?
So, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So I want to echo exactly what the minister said, in the sense that I lead an organization where everybody every day comes in very passionate about the work that they do, and they give their 110% on a daily basis to be able to protect Canadians.
The chair has really clipped my time here. I just want to know if we declined to participate or if we weren't invited.
So from a cyber perspective, we regularly work with our other eyes, all of our eyes, but in particular the UK, the US, and Australia. And we are ready to provide additional support in Pillar 2 of AUKUS when the appropriate time comes where the government decides that they want to do that. But I can tell you that from a cyber perspective, we're very much a Canuckus. I feel that we work from a foreign cyber operations and active cyber operations collectively with them and able to do the work that we do in defending our what Canada believes is important from a partnership perspective.
Okay, so we haven't been asked.
We've been asked to work with them with the UK and the US on a series of foreign cyber operations. These are the types of work we do, as well as foreign intelligence. So linked to our mandate, we are definitely working with those eyes.
Okay, thank you. To Mr. Matthews, are you prepared to table the numbers that demonstrate the 1.76% with this committee by the end of the week?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, those numbers are already on the department's website, but happy to share with the committee. Just maybe a reminder that that's a two-part formula, what the department is forecasted to spend, as well as some spending by other departments, up against the OECD predictions or projections on GDP, but those numbers are on the website and we will share.
Okay, good. And to the General, Mr. Bazan asked you specifically about fighter pilots. Can you tell me in general what our pilot situation is like across the Air Force? Like, do you know the numbers? Or how much are we short?
Again, I would not be able to give you the exact numbers of pilots for each of the platforms that we have pilots for. We can certainly provide those numbers moving forward. One of the big challenges that we have as well is that as we move from some platforms to others, is a transition time that's required, and we have to train those crews to be able to operate on the new platforms, and that puts pressure.
Do we have adequate personnel?
We still require more people in the same way that the Canadian Armed Forces is short personnel. We are short personnel within the Air Force.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Colleagues, I'm assuming the bells are going to go off shortly. Do I have your consent to proceed regardless? Okay, thank you. Mr. Collins, 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And a couple quick questions for Chief Xavier on the cyber issues that have been referenced in the committee here today and the resources allocated to the same. My questions are along the lines of the disinformation campaigns that have been generated by Russia and others to undermine our institutions here in Canada and to undermine the government's support on many files, including our support for Ukraine. And much of that information, disinformation, is spread on social media platforms, and it's meant to change public opinion, and has in certain quarters of the country. And we're seeing increasing amount of social media messages from our constituents. People who've bought into these campaigns that have been put out by Russia, and I'm just wondering the initiatives that CSC is taking in terms of combating that with the resources that have been provided in the mains as well as DPU, and what role parliamentarians can play from an education perspective to get at those campaigns that we know are increasing almost by the day.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. And indeed, we do see misinformation and disinformation as one of these ubiquitous threats that we know we live through on a daily basis. As part of the threats to democratic processes that we published in December 2023, we highlight that mis and disinformation is going to be pervasive throughout all the various activities that we see, either from a democratic process or as well from a warfare perspective. So in terms of disinformation campaigns, the Government of Canada has put in place a series of campaigns of which we have led on their behalf, including up until March 2024 of this year. And that website highlights different ways in which Canadians can get involved in terms of better understanding how they can combat mis and disinformation. A big part of it is education, and we work that with other government partners, but recognize it's a whole of society situation. And so to your point about the role MPs can play, really continue to ensure that you are also using information that you can see from a base of facts, or use more than one source of information. And that's what we really try to encourage on the website, is ensuring that you have a good sense of where the information is coming from. Look for more than one source. One of the campaigns we ran was, if it gives you a bit of a rethink, or it's not, are you asking the critical question about the information looking at, or if your eyebrow raises, then you might be looking at information that could be of concern to you. And so we really highlight and recommend looking at more than one piece of information. We have used our foreign cyber operations to be able to disrupt information. We've also sanitized intelligence to ensure that information is made aware, especially with regards to the Russia disinformation campaign that they've run. And these are various aspects of our toolkit that we'll continue to use to ensure that information is factual.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I?
Unfortunately, it's 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Sorry. 1.5 minutes, Madame Michaud.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to hear you on the 155mm artillery shells. There's a $4.4 billion contract that has been given to INT Defense and General Dynamics to develop a strategy to increase the 155mm production. But last year, there was a $4.8 million investment that could have improved from 3,000 to 5,000 production of the artillery shells, 66% increase. It seems that this strategy is simply preventing us from ramping up production, but Ukraine cruelly needs these. So why are we investing in this strategy? What are we waiting for? When actually will we reap the dividends? And is the objective to increase production to support Ukraine? Thank you. Thank you for your question. Yes, it's clear that the objective is to increase the production capacity, but at the same time, we want to procure a different product, which is an improvement on the previous product.
To increase production, but there's also the investment announced in the Defense Policy Update is about an investment in infrastructure to also start hopefully producing a different kind of round that's actually a better quality, better range, etc. That's going to take time. One of the things we have learned from watching Ukraine and the response of Canada and allies is we've all given what's on our shelves, and standing up new manufacturing takes time. And so We are starting the process of investing in infrastructure to increase production, but also get an improved type of round. But that will not be overnight. It's going to take months and months of work to get there, probably years.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Ms. Masson, 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I was trying to get to at the end of my last round ultimately was the fact that there has been a great deal of money spent on outsourcing, and it's not being spent there isn't being as much spent within the Department on public services and public servants. So we're talking about signing off on $10.5 billion in terms of these contractors and so on. There's been countless examples of P3 failures in the Department of National Defense. We have the CSC building fiasco, the Montreal Supply Depot. So now the Defense Policy Update and Budget 2024, there's, again, billions of dollars for major P3s to provide military housing, as an example. So what do you have in terms of evidence that these will be far more cost-effective and successful, considering we have seen so many examples that is not the case?
Points here, Mr. Chair, and I know we're tight on time. Number one, the size of the public service or public servants inside defense has grown, as well as spending on contracts as our budget has grown, so both have been increasing. As we look to launch new products or projects, we look at basically most effective way to deliver. Sometimes that's through public servants, sometimes it's through contractors, sometimes it's through a mix. And so that analysis or options analysis is ongoing. We know on things like housing, we are in a rush to build quickly, and doing things the way they've been done in the past will not work. So you will see a different approach on housing, so we can start to deal with that problem in an effective manner.
We're going to have to unfortunately leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Mr. Kelly, 3 minutes.
Picking up right there, the budget contained $0 for new housing in each of the next 2 years. So how is that a new approach? That seems to be exactly the same old approach.
So I think there's a couple of ways here, Mr. Chair. New money, which will come, certainly helps, but you can also look at how it's delivered. There is existing money in the main estimates for infrastructure, for housing. Can we leverage that more effectively, more quickly to generate new builds?
But it's correct that there is zero in the budget.
There's money in the Defense Policy Update for infrastructure.
Not this year or next year, though.
We have existing money for infrastructure.
Okay. So Canadians had I think the embarrassing spectacle of an allied ambassador telling a national television audience that Canada has moved within NATO from being a bit of an outlier to being the outlier in the entire alliance. Now, setting aside the issue of there being no plan to get to 2%, I'd like to go back to, I think it was Mr. Falk's question about how the 1.76% of GDP calculation is arrived at. Many observers and analysts are having a tough time adding up what's in the budget and estimates and getting to 1.76% quite a few years down the road. So can you tell us more about how this is calculated, or let Canadians know how they can check your math?
Quick answer, it is on the departmental website.
Okay, where? Like a little more specific, because people are having trouble finding this.
We will send the link to the committee members in the backup, and it's basically forecasted spending on a cash basis compared against the forecasted GDP for Canada as calculated by the OECD.
Okay, thank you. We haven't had a clear answer from the minister on the delivery of additional items that have been announced. We get a lot of announcements, but no delivery dates. Will Canada's order of artillery shells, the quadrupled order announced in December, will that be received before December of this year?
We will continue to receive ammunition we've ordered, but
Okay, so you didn't answer my question.
I'm getting there,
okay.
Mr. Chair. These are long-term contracts to see the augmentation. I expect it will be sometime after 2024 before you see a ramp-up.
Okay, so it will not be in 2024, as the minister told this committee.
say unequivocally. I'm saying, if you talk to the manufacturers, they're talking about 2-year lead times to order
so the minister
products.
said 2024. It's not going to happen, though, you don't think?
There has been increased production, but before our stocks start to increase, it's going to take a while.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I'll take the final 3 minutes. I'll direct this question to General Allen. I thought that in all the back and forth here this morning, watching the most shocking statement the minister made was that there were 70,000 people wanting to get into the Canadian military in the last year, and we're only able to process 4,000 or 5,000. That's I find it borderline scandalous, frankly, that we have a bunch of young Canadians keen to join the military, and we can't even process them. So what's the response to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, we always want to do what we can to reduce both the time and the process that's necessary to bring Canadians into the Canadian Armed Forces. I think in any recruiting process, and this certainly has been historically, not everybody who applies will be able to meet the standards that are necessary to join the Canadian Armed Forces, nor does everybody's interests necessarily stay the same. We know, however, that we have a role to play in making the recruiting process faster and easier so that people's interest does not go elsewhere. In the
to be honest with you, that sounds like a series of excuses. If I know that 70,000 people are outside the door and they want to get in, and by and large they're qualified, and we have a 16,000 person deficit, in other words, people are leaving quicker than they're being replaced, commitments to improving, it does sound like a series of excuses. And this committee has opined on this several times. And I don't understand why in 2024 we're not processing a lot of people a lot more quickly, because we desperately need them.
So I would agree with you, Mr. Chair. We need to take faster steps, and that indeed has been what's been happening over the last year. Changes to the requirements for applicants coming in with respect to changing the medical standard that's necessary has been underway, so that people with allergies, asthma, ADHD, and anxiety are no longer automatically not able to join based upon a medical standard moving forward. So that risk assessment has been made to ensure that we're not excluding Canadians who could operate effectively within the universality of service structure that we have. As it pertains to security clearances, we're trying to improve that process so that the time frame, as you know already, members are enrolled into the Canadian Armed Forces without the final security clearance. They have a reliability clearance that is done, and then we have the time between the time that they are enrolled to the time that they start their occupational training and need access to classified material that their security clearance can go through. I would say our paper-based processes are terribly antiquated and need to be replaced by the digital system, and the new online digital portal that has been created for applicants is one of the steps of many.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave that answer here, but what disturbs me is that you may be giving the same response this time next year, and maybe even the year after that, and that will be, I think from this committee's standpoint, completely unacceptable. But unfortunately,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have to bring this meeting to a close, or this part of the meeting to a close. I want to just, again, reiterate our committee's thanks to Mr. Matthews. Apparently, you're going over to the dark side now. And we're rather hoping that all requests for procurement and personnel from DND will proceed expeditiously from now on. So thank you again. With that, I'll just let the witnesses leave. Colleagues, we're...
Mr. Crosby, and General Allen. This is their last meeting as well.
Really?
Yeah, they're all
How do we
retiring.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, am I informed that the Crosby twins are finishing as well? Okay. And General Allen. Okay. Okay, well, colleagues, we got votes?
We're not adjourned yet, guys.
No, yeah. We're not adjourned. Marie-France. All right. Yeah. So it's, I want to call the votes. I'd like to call the votes all at once, if I may. Shall the votes under Communications Security Establishment, the Department of National Defense, the Grievances External Review Committee, the Military Police Complaints Commission, and the Office of Intelligence Commissioner of the Maine Estimates 2024 carry? On division? Thank you. Shall I report this vote to the House? On division? Sure. Thank you very much. Wednesday, we're going to continue with the procurement report consideration, and then a week today, 1 hour space defense and 1 hour of more consideration of the committee of the report. With that, seeing no objection, meeting's adjourned.